All right. I'm gonna, I just did one. It was magical. I wasn't expecting to do more than one tonight because I'm leaving tomorrow, flying back to Romania. But sometimes in life it's 3 a.m., be up at 10:30. Sometimes you just gotta, try, just go for the first 10 minutes and just see if it is what it is. Um, so without further ado, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Mhm. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's a good start, huh? Okay. Let's pull this up. Let's pull this up. Yeah, I usually don't use names, but I like the first name here. And it's not a follower of mine, so screw it. Let's do it. All right, so I got all the information hidden. Okay, so let's go ahead and share that screen. Where'd it go? Okay. So we have an Aries moon. Very, very familiar. My girlfriend has one. And we have a Taurus North Node with Sun in Taurus too. 7th house. With the Scorpio rising. Interesting. And we've got that Venus in Gemini, Mars in with Saturn in Cancer in the 9th. All right. Well. First is first, in karmic astrology, or my form of karmic astrology, I'm always looking at the North Node. And the North Node represents the mountain never climbed in past lives, where you're trying to ascend to, metaphorically. And when it's South Node in Taurus, or in Scorpio, right on the ascendant, with any squares to Neptune, we have someone who has a past life tendency of being a little bit disillusioned, um, a little bit. And I've been starting with, maybe for this one I'll start with the basic stuff because it's for your daughter who might not know much about astrology. I don't know. But yeah, basically, like, when I see that, I'm like, okay, past life mystic, someone who's been through a lot, and who in this lifetime is trying to ground herself. She's trying to find a solid sense of security within herself that's not attached. Well, it's complicated because relationships do play a huge part in it. And when Horus is Saturn. Okay, well, yeah, okay. So it's gonna be a minute for the Saturn turn. But yeah, so right off the bat, you see the moon in Aries and the sun in Taurus, and you say, okay, those are back-to-back signs. So you got Earth, the grounding influence of Taurus, and fire, that Aries moon. Aries moon is a interesting placement. I've never met an Aries moon that doesn't have at least some level of a temper. And I always think of them, especially she has what my girlfriend has, Eris, which is like the volcanic asteroid right on her moon. Exact degree, you see 2020. So, there could be issues with impulsivity, outbursts, but ultimately the moon being the emotional need, you can't live without it. In Aries, you have someone who has this deep need for independence, this deep need for blazing their own trail, right? And they will not feel satisfied. And then it's in the sixth house. So, that speaks to service. It speaks to, going back to that whole grounding the self and consistency in the daily routine. And, it's well supported by Taurus, which is a sign that is very stable. Yet, let's see. So the square with Chiron's in Capricorn. Okay, got it. So that on its own can be a little bit, there can be issues with control. And with this alignment, I think that, let's see what elements. She's got water, she's got fire, she's got earth, she's got air, she's got all elements. That's good. Well, that adds like a well-roundedness to the personality. But North Node and Taurus, I don't get many of them, honestly. It's really about yeah, like I said, not it's about so it's about finding the balance between not relying so much on others for what you might call your personal power, and also seventh house is the house of relationships. That's what the sun is. So relationships will be a very big part of her life. Usually it's romantic relationships. It's also, if she was like a psychologist, she'd be like a client. This is a seventh house relationship. I consider BFFs like the closest of friends in that category. Partnerships in general, in business partnerships. It even rules open enemies. And she has her sun on Algol, which is a very tough fixed star that can add to that kind of headstrongness. And there can definitely be, just with this, like, a lot of stubbornness, and with Mars, the planet of action, of assertiveness, of movement forward, being on Saturn, that's actually, a difficult placement up until around 30, Saturn return. It makes someone, it can be frustrating because it makes someone feel like they have to, like, just work super hard for whatever they're working towards, and then kind of have it pulled back. And the vertex is there too. So, that can kind of add to whatever frustrations might be boiling. As a Scorpio rising, however, she has the ascendant opposite the sun. Now, what that can do is that it can make someone appear, so Scorpio risings, they're very, like, they have this immense power, right? Especially with the South Node. Like, I have the same thing with South Node, the same sign as my ascendant, Leo. There's a lot of been there, done that with the energy of Scorpio. And Scorpio risings, they have this immense power, right? They walk in the room, they might not say, they don't have to say anything, like, people notice them. There's this real intrigue, right? This mystique, you could call it. And, having the chart ruled by Pluto in the second is very, very interesting. From a karmic perspective, it relates to past lives spent in survival mode. Also, interestingly enough, her Pluto is exactly my moon. So there's no coincidences in astrology. It's 21 Sagittarius is my moon sign. That's her Pluto. So, second house Pluto people can become very obsessed with power, with it can create workaholics. It can create people who are just willing to kind of just, like they spent so many past lives, like in South Node in Scorpio is also like there's a need to going back to the grounding. Like, Taurus is about, like I said, grounding yourself within yourself, right? Like, think of meditation as an example of how you do that. And Pluto in the second house is, really telling me that there's past lives that were spent in survival mode. And when you have that, you can have a tendency to, when it comes to money, when it comes to self-esteem, identity, like, it's like the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you've had past lives where you're, in, traumatic situations, where you, like, think of a homeless person, right? I'm not saying that's what she was, but those memories might not be conscious, but they're in the soul, and it can lead to someone who overworks themselves, who or overworks, themselves. And I've seen it in the charts of, like, very, very affluent people who still are afraid of going broke, and they just, like, live their whole lives, like, making all this money, working their asses off, and, like, afraid to, like, spend because they have this deep fear around money. That it could run out, and it can lead them into doing things, not immoral things, but just, an over obsession with that kind of material. So what is a cure? I see it already. The cure is the high energy of Taurus, which is literally the sign that is connected to the second house, where the Pluto is. And that is about going deep within the self and doing the shadow work that's necessary, meaning surrendering, listening, allowing other people's, opinions and voices to be heard, and having an open mind, which is easier said than done. And yeah, listening is keeps coming up for me. Listening, right? Because the ego doesn't want to listen. It prefers to just kind of think, I know what's right. Um, I can just kind of live life on my terms. I don't need to listen to anyone. But there's a big need for inner conquest, dark night of the soul, if you will, to really, really look at herself. And by the way, like astrology is a mix of the chart and free will. So everything I'm saying, she could have completely done this to the highest manifestation, but I like to just give the download or whatever is coming to me. So yeah, that's the thing with second house Pluto. But after 30, it gets a lot better. And it's not it's not a horrible Pluto placements. And it's I mean, it's difficult in the sense that you're being challenged to sit with yourself and to take responsibility and to not shift that responsibility and to not fill the life with almost like trivial, meaningless um, activities per se. Um, like gossiping or like kind of low vibe Gemini, which is where the Black Moon Lilith is, which is represents like the lowest potential, right? Everyone has one, and it just represents that person at their lowest. Um, there's also a big need for spiritual protection. Eighth house Black Lilith definitely asks for that. And yeah, just really to dive deep into the self and to be honest and to really, really kind of let down the guard, because it's a very powerful chart. Don't get me wrong. Algol gets a bad rep because it can be, like I said, headstrong, violent, abusive, all these things. But at the same time, it's also extremely potent in terms of its spiritual potential. So with that said, you add the moon Aries, and you could easily have someone who is so powerful that they don't want to listen to anyone, as I said before. So that's the big thing right off the bat is how how is she? Oh, okay, sure. Kind of like in my meditative mood. So yeah, how is she with that, right? Um, so with the Chiron there in the third, a lot of people who have that, and she doesn't have that many hard aspects. You can see there's not much red in this part of the grid. There's some Chiron, but you tend to have someone who is there could have been like early pain around communication, and could be siblings, it could be just the early environments. Maybe, with all these placements I talked about before, that explosiveness, 29-degree Mercury in Aries also, which is a very, very large test of, how can one be, especially, yeah, it's square Chiron. So how can one be, like, it's very blunt, right? So it's like the moon is in Aries, right? It's how you feel, what it takes for you to be comfortable. And then with Mercury there, it's connected. So there's a connection between her emotions and how she expresses herself and how she thinks. So basically, to look at the opposite sign is to look at, the way to heal something, right? So the opposite of Aries is Libra. Libra is about diplomacy. It's about seeing the other side, person's perspective, right? And just, it's like diplomat energy, not fake, just really, really, really being curious about, how does this other person see the world. Now, with that said, I just want to say that this chart is incredible in terms of leadership potential, in terms of just potential for overall material success. And I think that, she might be the type that could be her worst enemy in that, but that if she goes down, does the things she needs to do, maybe she's done them or started to, you know, and fully surrenders and allows information from other sources to come in, like this one, you know, and not, not have a defensive, because a lot of Aries moons can be, Taurus, like, it's two stubborn signs, not to say she's stubborn, just, it's just kind of the potential. And yeah, just like really, really looking at how sees herself, right? Because with the Pluto in the second ruling a chart and Scorpio rising, there can be, an obsession with power, and with controlling and things of that nature. And in the third house, Chiron, when maybe that wasn't there in childhood, maybe there's something, that got in the way or made her think that she wasn't capable enough of something, related to communicating, or her own thought process. Maybe she was just very assertive and kind of got into quarrels, whatever. Um, that's, really where the healing is, and most of the hard aspects are to Chiron, which is the healer, which makes me think that she has, potential to be some type of healer. It's just, Chiron is the archetype of the wounded healer, the person who has to first heal themselves before they can have that same healing impact on others. So when you see that many Chiron aspects, you say, okay, well, definitely she has to go through it karmically, but on the other side, it can be outstanding. So, she's supported by many parts of the chart. But I want to talk about the North Node in the seventh house, South Node in the first house. So South Node in the first house, North Node in the seventh house, there's a need to balance out the extremes of Libra and Aries in the sense of relationships, where Libra would be complete codependency and, just like, which I doubt she has with the Aries moon, but still. And then the other extreme of, zero compromise. I'm doing me. I don't, want to make any compromises in relationship. I'm going where I'm going, which is good. It's good. It's good in a sense, but it just needs to be balanced. And when I see sixth house sun, I'm like, that's someone who, their day-to-day routine and what they do for their health, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all that. There's like a spiritual goal there, right? There's a real need to do that. And success is also about service. So, it's about your job, it's about how you can kind of be there for humanity. So, with that said, the sun trends Chiron, so that's quite nice. It's another great indication of a healer. You can literally see it here, like Chiron has these three aspects, and yeah. So, let's talk about Chiron in Capricorn. I'll turn my camera on for a little bit. Okay. So Chiron in Capricorn, right? And it's in the third, as I said. Um, it can make one feel, like I said, it correlates with the Pluto, like insecure about their place in society. Where there's like some difficulty, um, like in respect of finding their, I'll say her, I'll speak straight to Angela. Finding your niche in the outside world, right? Um, Now I will say that a lot of times this can come from the mother. Um, and with the squares, the moon squaring Chiron, there could be some kind of tough karmic relationship there, but it's not always the mother. So in some charts, many charts, the sun is the father, the moon is the mother. In my experience, it's the more dominant parent that's the sun, and the moon that is the least dominant parent. So the classically masculine one is the sun. So you'll know which one's which. But yeah. So then when you add Black Moon Lilith in Gemini, right? On the Venus in the eighth, um, it's like the self-defeating potential is about kind of filling life with things that don't really add to the big picture. And also like talking over people, talking people around their way of thinking rather than listening, right? It goes back to that again. And just like needing to have like the last word, right? So once again, it goes back to, like listening and respecting other people's points of view, and kind of having that like mindset of like, I know nothing, which, I do that. I practice that. I'm always wanting to learn, and it doesn't matter from who. So yeah, compromise is big. And the whole thing with Black Lilith is that it brings like the self-defeating parts of oneself to the light. So in the eighth house, that can, like I said, there's a need for for spiritual protection and to do things that keep her away from the darker energies, because Venus conjunct Black Lilith is definitely a placement that is powerful, but it can also have a strange effect on relationships. Essentially, it can bring like very unconventional relationships. But it can make one, especially with Venus in Gemini, it can make one who makes someone who is very seductive, right? But can have some type of like diva behavior and kind of like that whole grass is greener on the other side type of energy, right? And yeah, Venus and Geminis are like, infamous. I don't like astrology stereotypes, but for kind of like they'll like get into like a relationship like out of like curiosity, right? Um and it's like the complete, yeah, grass is green on the other side. They need to have like a very strong intellectual connection with the person. But yeah, so on its own, like the conjunction between these two is it creates some very good business, very good for diplomacy also, um leadership, all that stuff. um so it has good and difficult sides. Like it's really, really, really good for like the arts and creativity. The creative side of Venus is like expanded. Also like the whole metaphysical dimensions of life um are good, but then there's this need for perfectionism, especially like with partnerships that can be difficult, right? No one's perfect. um and it can make someone like magnetically attracted to like dangerous people, right? So yeah, I mean, honestly, like Venus on the Lilith kind of makes the Lilith easier. Um, but it's really about like it's like it's very good for like having a very charming, personality. Like I said, like usually quite good with people, but the shadow side is that it can be quite egotistical in relationships. And just like a huge, huge need to be loved. And there's a need to like look at the balance in relationships. Um, so that's very important. So aside from that, yeah. So yeah, it's really like the hero's journey, um, the hero's journey, and just really not allowing like the how do you say it, the lower sides, um, whether it's sexuality or whatever it is, to be too attracted to like the bad type of people. And you know it is definitely like a very like witchy in a good way type energy also. um but can also create like an endless pit when it comes to matters related to Venus, which is love. So yeah, a big theme is also like breaking conventions. So and just control in relationships. So like there can be like this big like feeling of being suffocated in any kind of relationship that's like too clingy or too whatever, right? Um so it's really asking one to like look at like what they really value in relationships, which goes back to my original point, which is what you value in yourself. Um um Definitely don't think that this would be someone who could be like easily pushed around. I mean, you got the Aries moon, but yeah, it's really about like honoring boundaries and that whole compromise of values I spoke of. So, Venus in the eighth in Gemini alone is very good for attracting money, external resources, and it's also very good for the esoteric, and just really wanting intense, intimate relationships. But then you add Gemini to that, and it creates someone who's usually very curious and flirtatious. I said, like how important communication is in relationships and that intellectual connection. And there can be, yeah, that restlessness and that ability to get bored very easily. But it's also very good for like entrepreneurship and just like having like very like boom ideas, midheaven and Leo also. Um, so yeah, I think a big theme from the get-go is like when someone is in their higher vibration of this, they will look, they'll be able to look at the concept of power and have a healthy relationship to it. But when they're in the lower vibe of this, they can be controlling, and with the Neptune doing what it's doing, it can definitely lead to some self delusion. It squares the descendant and the ascendant, so that's called a T square. And basically, Neptune, it shoots out in Leo, very close to the career, the midheaven, career. So, that when you add descendant, ascendant, um, Neptune, it's about catering to more spiritual relationships, ones that are more based on true love and not based on fantasy. But with that said, um, Neptune on the IC can create very foggy memories of childhood. It can lead to someone either like having like no memories or very few memories, or very distorted, either for the good or for the bad of childhood. So there is a need to kind of look back at that and see how is that affecting, the adult, or I guess, how old is she? Teenage still, dynamics of relationships. And by the way, I read charts like as long as they're over, you know, 18, 17, like I read charts the same as I would read them at 18, 25, 30, 35, 40. Like it's literally the deck of cards you're dealt, and your free will, is ultimately what what determines it, right? There's astrology is not nothing in astrology is a death sentence or a sentence of like this is how it's going to be. It's the themes that are present and that need to be looked at. So with Mars and Cancer, there can definitely be some. It's interesting because the moon is in Aries, so the moon's ruled by Mars, and then Mars is in Cancer, so it's like a very strong moon sign. But then it filters out into Mars and Cancer, which can be conjunct Saturn, which can be quite difficult and unassertive. So there can be frustration, right? There can be some level of frustration around not being able to get the point across, and what can happen is that there can be like these like passive aggressive power games, potential for emotional manipulation. Now, on a higher level, the amount of highly, highly successful people that have this combination, it is out of this world. This is like these two, because what it does is that makes someone have to grind super hard, until their Saturn return for part of their life. And then they are left with this just extreme determination. And I also sense in this chart someone who is able to really see things like, even though there can be some stubbornness, they're able, they're free thinkers, and someone who does not want to be told what to do. So yeah, like for relationships, it's just very important to have someone that is able to meet that need of giving space, giving freedom, giving independence, while also understanding, and we look at Juno for that, Capricorn, while also being like a very solid rock, if you want to put it like that, a very healing solid rock, because you have Juno and Chiron together. And in the third, it goes back to that need for real communication and respect. Like she'd definitely be attracted, and this is like more big picture, like marriage stuff. But I still, like I said, I read these the same way. Like what you really look for in a committed relationship, and it's it's that real, someone who, Capricorn and Junos sometimes are attracted to older, or at least wiser people who they can respect, and who has something to offer them. And with the Gemini Venus, I think that a challenge, someone who's like not like a challenge necessarily, but someone who challenges them in the sense that they're not predictable. I mean, they're not unpredictable. Like they're like rocks. They're constant, but they're also, allowing her, Angelina, allowing you to flourish on your own, and to keep your sovereignty and your independence. So yeah, being held back is not good. So when we look at Jupiter over there in the 11th, that's a very good placement also for wealth. And in Virgo, you see everything. You're observant, you're super intelligent, and you can usually, with this placement, 11th house Jupiter is quite good for popularity. Of course, with the sun and moon, there's things that have to get, that have to get kind of that they have to get past. You have to get past, but overall, it's a great placement for that. And yeah, for wealth even too, which is interesting with the Pluto in the second house. So moving away from Scorpio, South Node is to North Node in Taurus is really about moving away from, you know, tendencies to control. Back to base cam a little bit. To control and to override others, you know. And it's also about like change. You know, this is all about like a karmic quest to overcome like this distrust for change, you know. And in Taurus, you know, that's about, you know, it's Venus, it's about creativity. So it's like developing like creative outlets to or outlets that you can channel all that all the intense emotions into, right? And when you have that, then you avoid hitting out at loved ones. And a lot of times, you know, South Node Scorpios, there's like traumatic endings to past lives, where there's like deep emotional wounds buried, where there can be like fear of being cheated, in any type of way. But you know, it's really about trusting the process of change, you know. And that's where that newfound sense of stability and peace comes from. So yeah, and just letting go of kind of the ego-centered actions, and allowing yourself to really truly feel relationships. Now with the seventh house sun, it can make someone, you know, a lot of their life purpose, not purpose, but just like you know, relationships just being a very big part of the life, right? Whether it's business or, you know, love relationships. And there can be, you know, codependency can show up here. But you know, really, really shining when you're in a happy, balanced relationship. And yeah, really benefiting through these partnerships. And I don't want to just say relationships, like partnerships, right? And you know, usually people who have this, they have like a fortunate partnership that comes and that kind of helps them see the world in a different way. So yeah. And of course, Taurus, I don't really like to go into sun signs, but you know, there's that need for stability, you know, and routine and security, and it's just about, it's not a bad thing. The highest energy of Taurus is heaven on earth, right? It's where you've gone deep into yourself and you don't need to rely on anyone else besides you. You have a healthy relationship to power, and you take responsibility, and you're open to change. You're open to discovering new avenues, you know, like you're open to like discovering new ways of relating to other, as you'd say. Um, but yeah, the thing once again, and it can be very traditional, conventional in a way, but like, you know, Taurus can be very, or you know, very down to earth typically, right? And very with the, you know, this, you know, engaging the senses, right? The art, you know, art is very, you know, creativity is very, very important. um so then, you know, you throw in the ninth house, right, which is the house of like learning, expansion, towards higher truth, and I could see how that might be impacted. And you know, it could be tell the Saturn return that real opening. A lot of astrologers actually have Saturn in the ninth house, believe it or not. But with Mars and Saturn there, it can kind of push, it can push back higher education, it can push back traveling, it can push back like everything that relates to like expanding, right? So until the Saturn return 30. So just knowing that is huge. And what it can also do is it can give a very serious approach towards trying, and that's why so many astrologers have it, and especially with Mars there, a serious approach towards really like going towards what is truth? Why are we here? Where we come from? Where are we going? These types of questions, right? And Ceres, asteroid Ceres is also there, 29 degrees. And that's about kind of how you nurture yourself, how you nurture others. So in Cancer, it's like nurturing others. Well, actually, it's actually a very good one. It's very linked to the mother, actually, the relationship with the mother. So if there's a close and loving relationship with the mother, then it really, really impacts like the adult relationships. If not, then there can be like the codependency type relationships that are toxic. And in Ceres, it's like really like nurturing yourself through acquiring knowledge of the world, the truth I was talking about, higher truth, which comes from traveling either physically or traveling metaphorically. Metaphorically, it would be something like this, as I said. Physically, experiencing different cultures, different philosophies, trying different things on. Like you can go into a situation and maybe it's not your cup of tea, but just allowing yourself to just entertain it and compartmentalize and be curious. Like, like I last reading, I literally just said this. I was like, if someone like a good example is someone who's like really, really into liberal politics, but maybe they might wonder like, why do the conservative people think the way they do? They can't all be stupid, if it's half the country. So just like looking into some that, and that's just a metaphor, that's just an example, right? And just like wondering like how, like why do they think the way they do, so that's important. So with the Aries moon though, yeah, big need to kind of have action, like to do sports. It's very competitive, very like love to challenge themselves, and they may have experienced their mother in a quite independent manner. And it's just the ultimate go-getter, and I call it like the spiritual warrior energy, right? It's like you can never hold an Aries moon down. Like they can get pushed down and get back up, especially with the Mars and Saturn. And yeah, so I talked about the sixth house, and so yeah, I think it's really like about nurturing the physical self, like I said, there's like a South Node conjunct the ascendant. It's kind of trippy, but people who have that, they a lot of times they looked physically very similar in recent incarnation. And kind of a similar personality and similar in the sense of how they're showing up in relationships. So it's like if there's some cycle there that needs to be broken, it's resolved through that T-square, which is you see me, but basically it's Neptune, fourth house, and it's just like diving deep into the self, deep into spirituality. And then allowing that to kind of go to the career, which the midheaven, which is like the dharma, the kind of, I guess you could say, outer world purpose in Leo 23 degrees is very much about wanting to shine in the world, right? Wanting to shine. So and I don't see any part of the chart that would signify to me that that's not going to happen and highly probable. It's just about having that balance between work, life, success, all that stuff, and then emotional, spiritual, routine, very important. I definitely think with a 6th house Aries moon that if there's not like a solid physical routine in place, that there can be lots of frustration. And I've seen people with Aries moons, not all the time, and I guess there's not so much fire, so yeah, maybe not. But I was gonna say that like I've observed lots of Aries moons who sometimes turn to things like weed or whatever, like it's like there's so much energy that's like you need to get that out. And some people who have that, there can be anger and they smoke, but like it's escapism, so there's like a need to like find that outlet, right? That's like really what the chart's asking for. Now there's tons of curiosity also, even though it's with Taurus, I said like Palace in the 8th in Gemini. It's someone who can grasp many concepts at once. It's very good for intelligence, and very strong intuition in the 8th. Potential for like very high intuitive abilities. So it's like learning to really trust that, and going deep into the mysteries of the world. Like whatever interests you, just go into it. Anything creative that you think you might be good at, go into it. Just try. And yeah, so definitely think that traveling in the sense I was talking about before is a doorway to higher awareness. And just like intense experiences in love, and I think with Venus 8th house there, it's very, very good for being able to be vulnerable in that way. It just comes down to the controlling aspect, as I've mentioned. So there is one very difficult aspect, and that is Venus opposite Pluto. So this goes with something I was already talking about. And basically that creates difficulty when it comes to self-love, right? And it can create lots of drama in personal relationships. Someone who's like can be like obsessed with the concept of love and just really, really high intensity. So this can also be linked to like some of the darker sides. It's literally Venus Pluto. I have Venus square Pluto, so it's like similar but different. But basically, like it can just make someone like love really, really intensely, and it's not everyone that can kind of return that, and then if the person doesn't love themselves, which Venus is ultimately about self-love, they can try to like use control, use the manipulation, to kind of like power struggles and just toxic tendencies in relationships to keep the partner with them. It's like the power struggle in the relationships, right? And there's even possibility for violence with that one. So yeah, it's really, once again, like it's really asking to push the energy into that place of vulnerability and create and creativity, and to really, really just completely manage it and transmute it in a way. Because like Pluto in the 2nd house, it can be, money can be such a big thing, but there's a huge link between, because it can make it go really up and down, and until the person learns, until Angelina learns about, the importance of that internal power, that internal self, it can really make the things that are being pushed for, which South Node in ruled by Pluto could be power. It can be frustrating. So it's really looking for a different type of power that's important. So then you have Uranus in the fifth. That's amazing creative energy. I mean, with Vesta. So it's like, someone who could literally like turn their creative passions into their work. And who can, when they're allowing themselves to like let go and be creative, who can really like seriously like just it's like they can turn their hobbies into the moneymaker, someone who does something like me where like I literally like have fun doing what I do, but it took a lot of hard work. But you have Vesta, which is about hard work on there. So, and also Uranus is about downloads. So and I know it's very young, but like with like mothering, it could be huge and could have a very, very serious approach to mothering and a very empathetic one with very unconventional and a kind of genius children. And with the creative part of it, it's like someone who could have like more unusual hobbies, um, things they find interesting. But it's important to dive into those. And as a Taurus, it can be difficult, right? But yeah, just like very, very yeah, unconventional creative pursuits. And okay, so yeah, then aside from that, Neptune, I talked about that, but it's very important. I already went into that about like like well, one other thing about that is that there can be this this desire to like kind of escape the home, or like the early like where they're from and whatnot. But there is a real need to really dive into that stuff if it's unhealed. So yeah, and then Mercury squaring Chiron at 29 degrees. Mercury in Aries is just like a very powerhouse. It's like the final conquest, right, of that energy. And people who have that tend to like believe, at least when they're younger, believe that they lacked in intelligence just because they had a different way of asserting their thoughts and opinions. But they're able to typically learn from experience. You can't, like I said, you can never push a Aries moon down. And like with the Venus, once you learn to really value yourself, you're able to share that wisdom with other people and be like you can become like an excellent listener, an excellent healer, or whatever it is, counselor, whatever. It doesn't have to be in that. It could be applied in the business world or whatever you're interested in. So, part of fortune in the 12th in Libra is literally telling me that the highest flow state is when there is that degree of surrender, that degree of letting go, aligning, the innermost, like the innermost self, with the collective energies, the spiritual energies, and just being within yourself, kind of, like there's this tendency to like externalize everything and like this, that, like action, like over here, over there, like just very like, not looking within. And that's really what it's asking, you know, to follow a spiritual kind of path that might be your own. You don't have to follow anyone's path. Everyone has their own version of it. So, and then in Libra, it's like the flow state, the joy is coming when you're creating that sense of harmony in your relationships, right? And yeah, just like finding the right people, and with Jupiter, where it is in Virgo, that can be another potential for perfectionism. So that's something to watch out for. I did say that there's like this ever widening circle of friends, and like big goals and visions that play a huge role in the life, and the ability to inspire like large groups of people. But like, yeah, Jupiter and Virgo at the highest end is like someone who wants to be of service, who has a strong desire to help out and be of service. Can be very spiritual, but then there's also that potential to be very obsessed with detailed perfection, that whole 100 or 0. If I can't get 100, I might as well fall to 0. And it's just about self-acceptance of, the impossibility of being perfect, and having a sense of humor around it. Like, it's funny to like, if allowing it to be funny, to not, to not always be 100, so yeah. And North Node on Descendant is just like the key relationships in life will be very, very faded for sure. I see that in many parts of the chart. And yeah, just like allowing the higher energy of Scorpio as the rising, to take over, which is someone who is able, who's powerful, knows they're powerful, and doesn't need to kind of throw it on other people, and can take it and be very observant, and just have that like intuitive like eye. That's in Scorpio rising, is their old souls, they have that intuitive eye. They can just kind of see through people, and and not, I'll say a million times, exert power in that negative way. Yeah. So I think the Mercury is very key here, and very key, and very, yeah, it's just very, very important to not to really know where the energy is being thrown, and to make sure that it's not being thrown onto the wrong people. So Algol, we talk about Algol on the sun, that fixed star. It's definitely, like I said, it can be violent. 1 second. So you're actually saved by the fact that you have Venus in the 8th house. That really actually makes the algal energy a lot more smooth. So you have to really be careful with taking risks. It can make one like take too many risks, physical risks, like a daredevil energy. And watching out for alcohol too, because that's literally what the Arab word for alcohol means, the demon, and it comes from the word algal. So yeah, like just it can kind of have like at the lowest vibe like a very dictatorial energy. But also artists, it's prominent among artists. So there's connections with like the media, medicine, even snakes. It's like a Medusa. It's like the myth of Medusa. So the sun, this is the thing. It's like these people either destroy or they create. And sometimes in order to create, they have to destroy, right? very passionate and can, like I said, inspire, be very inspired and be very artistic, but they can, be so intense that they can be destructive. Sometimes they need to be like, they feel like they need to be worshipped. And it can feel like a drug to them to kind of have that. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's just a chart of someone who needs to do, shadow work and really think like, what direction do I want my life to go? How am I going to channel this Aries energy into Libra energy? Um, you know, how am I gonna slow things down? So that's why like being a Taurus is helpful, but is on algol, but still being a Taurus is helpful because it allows one to have more groundedness, and to slow down. If you were Aries moon, I guess my girlfriend's Aries moon, Scorpio sun. So if you were that, it's way more hard. But yeah. And let's see with any other asteroids and fixed stars. So the Eris on the moon already just adds like that volcanic energy. Plus on Uranus. So I mean, I don't really like to talk about that stuff with someone who's young, but it's it's not just related to that. It can be, it's just like when you talk about that type of sexual energy, it's not related to sex, it's related to just that intense prana, that intense energy, that real energy, and it can be very also seductive, can make someone very attractive. Psyche on Neptune also, and then beautiful placement. Wow. Amor, I just had one of my last reading again on Neptune. That is literally such a beautiful part of this chart. It's an asteroid about, it's also very linked to the arts, but it's really about unconditional love. So to have Neptune there, it can really give someone like this unconditional love for just everything, and Psyche, can add this this real in-depth nature to the individual, who might be able to really see things once, if they can get past any self-defeating beliefs, who can really see themselves as a part of the whole, and 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 have this love for humanity. Um, and then yeah, Zubin al-Shalami is close to the ascendant, and that's like literally about magic, and it's about poetry, so about writing. So there's lots of talents here. And then Alphecca, I mean it's kind of far away, but that's a nice energy for women, and just beauty and whatnot. Now, what's really interesting is Zod, but it's like 3 degrees away, so I kind of don't really count it. But Zosma, so Zosma is an asteroid or a fixed star. It's right on. It's conjunct Jupiter, and that is about truth seeking. So people who have Jupiter, which is about expansion, with Zosma, they really want to go beneath the surface. They want to learn. They want to go deeper. So that's excellent. So not any big ones on the midheaven. I have to like stare at my computer because there's like so many asteroids. Okay, so there's not really any attached to the Mars-Saturn conjunction. So one other thing about Saturn Mars conjunctions that yeah, it can be hard to feel like you can like express your energy fully. There's like something holding you back, you know, like bashing your head against the wall type energy, frustration, right? So it's very, like I said, very ambitious, slowly but surely getting to your goals. Very good for discipline and so organizing yourself and your life. Nothing really on the ascendant. Besides the south, the north node. So yeah, you know, you're really just trying to find those right human relations, and the sun moon midpoint is right there. And on the north node, so yeah, it's like a mix of like the compromise thing I talked about with relationships, the power thing, the not being so perfectionist, the kind of giving in, the surrender, and you know the yeah getting past the own ego really, and listening, and that's literally like it opens up so many doors. Now also the asteroid Lilith is on Mercury, so that creates someone who, you know, as a woman can really work and do well in this kind of, I guess, society, business, kind of patriarchal, whatever, who can really hold their own and just stand up for what they believe in. That's Mars in Cancer too, standing up for what they believe in. And yeah, honestly, like this chart's interesting because it's pretty like it's not going in like all these different directions. It's like, you know, the big one is, you know, the Venus opposite Pluto, like, you know, remembering that self-love always has to come first, and if it doesn't, that it can be somewhat, it can really hinder relationships, and make one go for like this dark cycle of the wrong people. And then with the Neptune being opposite the midheaven, on the IC, you know, there's just that need to yeah, to dive into the past and to look at it honestly. Second. And I do believe that because it's a T square, and it goes out in the 10th house, that yeah, career and finding the right career, maybe one that you're able to be of service, is potentially like the best thing, for feeling like, you know, with the Mars and Cancer, they really like love their family. Um, but like Saturn can kind of create some tension around there, some karma to be worked through in that family circle. But then also, you know, there's just that need to like, you know, really, or desire to feel like what they're doing is helping out society. Now what do we have here? Looking for an aspect pattern, excuse me, mumbling. So Moon, Jupiter, okay, no. Moon, midheaven, Pluto, that's one grand trine. So, you know, that's exceptional for career and for just firepower in that regard. And then Scorpio, ascendant, Mars, Saturn, and Uranus. So that's two T squares, or two grand trines. And Just missing the third. That crazy. And with air, 15. Yeah, so that's not one. But also, mm, so there's a nice trine between Venus and Neptune. Um, that is very, very romantic. Very, very like that's actually the most creative, probably the most creative aspect in all astrology. Um, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's Aquarius, Gemini. Yeah, so it's like 11 degrees separate, but regardless, it's like being able to integrate imagination with creativity, with the inspiration, with the ability to like paint or sing or whatever it is, right? So yeah, so finding the channel, and that's what it's all about. Anyways, that is about it. That was a pretty straightforward chart. So I think you had the follow up, but oh yes, I did a minute 20 or an hour 20. It's like my goal these days to keep it to like around that time. Um, yeah, so most people what they do is they get the reading, follow up, and instead of just getting only the follow up, they get a blah, 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 they get a current astrology reading, and that is basically explaining the current energies. So this is just like natal. You get this done once, you don't need to get it done again, and you can get it done by a different astrologer. But it doesn't change, But the current astrology is changing every year, and that's a live session. Book um, a time and date, and the first hour is the follow up, and then after that, the next two are current astrology. And I have 2 degrees in psychology as well, so I add that to those live ones. So if you're interested in that, let me know. It's usually 350. I will do it for 250, and it'll be my pleasure to talk to you, Angelina. I'm not really clear on who. I mean, if it's Angelina watching the reading, or if it's Angelina's mother watching the reading, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed, and I have my list right in front of me. I'm pretty sure you had the follow up, so let's just check. Oh, and then I had one other thing. It says read the DMs, so let's do that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, definitely big things ahead of her. She's had a rough go through socially for a while. Yeah, I mean that's gonna happen, that's gonna happen when you have just starting a grab life, had a rough 2 years, who hasn't? Yeah, I mean look, like um for Angelina, it's like she has such a dynamic chart. Like I've seen this in so many people. like literally my girlfriend has like a chart that has like similarities, and like I have friends that have charts with similarities. So it's like when you have that intense energy, it can really, it's like a Ferrari, and it's like learning to you know to calibrate it, and or it's like having like I just used this metaphor last reading, but like it's like you have this, carriage with 9 horses and you're trying to control each one. But definitely, South Node on the ascendant is like past life mystic all the way, like 1000%. And you can tap into those powers and tap into the esoteric. Venus in the 8th house also is like really, really good for, it's like I always describe it as like having like a lantern um in the areas of life that most people are afraid of, you know, um, the occult, esoteric, you know, it gives this great regenerative power also, but like to be able to like actually be interested in these things that a lot of people are scared of. It's amazing. But yeah, like all the success stuff is just like, I mean, come on. The only thing holding her back would be, um, being overly bossy, overly controlling, and not having like a channel for her high energy. But this is a hustler, like I mean, there's 2 grand trines. Like, um, you definitely, to have a fire grand trine and then to have a water grand trine, it's mixing talents with intuition and willpower, action, and the ability to see through the BS. And that's also a past life talent with the South Node in Scorpio. So yeah. Anyways, so that is pretty much it. So we'll hear back, and I don't know when this will be uploaded because I'm gonna be traveling. Um, but it's done. So I will tell you that right now, and you can get back to me about the other reading if that's of interest. Up to you. Why is my computer battery so low? Anyways, thank you and ciao, ciao.